Yeah.
Hey, Leroy.
How you doing?
Pretty good, you?
You're broadcasting right now.
We're on?
Yep.
Great. Everything good? All right, folks, we're gonna call the meeting of the Androscoggin County Budget Committee to order at 6 p.m. It's September 8th, 2021. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we're going to start with the appointment of a singular member tonight. We have Lisa Cesare joining us as a District 7 selectman. Thank you for joining us, Lisa. We'll take care of the appointments from District 1 and 2 next Wednesday night. They'll be appointed next Tuesday night at the Lewiston City Council meeting. Now we need to elect a chair and vice chair for this year. Are there any nominations for chair?
I would like to nominate Lisa Ray.
Second.
Any further nominations for chair? I will accept that. All those in favor? Guess I'll throw myself in. It's a binding vote with election.
Z?
I'll open up nominations for vice chair of the committee.
Second.
I have a nomination and a second for Alan Ward. Any further nominations? Do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
Great. All those in favor? That is also unanimous. Rolling through this. We're going to do a quick roll call.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Just for the benefit of the listening public, this is my last year actually on the budget advisory. I am not rerunning for council, and I know you had that same situation as well too.
Same
so
situation here, so we'll be in need of other folks
The
to
rest of
take up the charge.
That makes 3.
new people.
Mr. Rennie is not joining us next year. Any further? All right, so if anyone wants to try their skills one night, you can definitely trade. Just a quick roll call. District 1, I am here, no resident. District 2, no counselor. Mr. Hill, not present. Mr. Rennie,
Here.
Mr. Stepanek,
Here.
Mr. Ward,
Here.
Mr. Lunt,
Here.
Mr. Walker, Mr. Pelletier,
Here.
Mr. Pearl,
Here.
Mr. Titus,
Here.
Mr. Nichols,
Here.
is it Miss or Mrs.? Mrs. Cesare. Yeah, great. Awesome, so that's 11 folks tonight. We're gonna move to consideration. Oh, before we do any more votes, Dave wanted me to say, when you're talking, speak into your mic, and when you're voting, keep your hands up until you can pan around all of us. I think that's the part we miss most of the time, so I'll try to remind us. Consideration of the October 21st, 2020 Budget Committee meeting minutes for approval.
Motion to approve is written and waive the public reading.
Looks like that.
I have a motion for Mr. Rennie, a second for Mr. Titus. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I'm gonna abstain.
All those opposed? All those abstaining? Thank you. That passes 10 to 0 to 1. All right. And we'll hand it over to Mr. Post for the budget presentation.
Okay, very quickly, and I will not read my missive to you in front of the book. You can read that at your leisure. I'll just give you a basic rundown, and that basic rundown is that expenses, our total increase overall is 2.16%. That's departments are up 3.55, the jail is up 0.66 this year. It's good to see that come down and level out. So we have a good handle on expenses, however, revenues are down. Last year, we used, and I told you at the time, and nobody listened to me, the fact that we used $380,000 of fund balance. This year, I used more than I wanted to, but cut it to $150,000. Reserves, departments last year, we used $100,000, and again, those are being depleted. This year, I'm looking at 0 for reserves on the department side. Last year in the jail, we used $550,000. That's no longer available, and I'm looking at $100,000 in 2022. I will tell you that in 2021, the county tax rate went down from 0.00125 to 0.00120, or in plain English, it went from $1.25 per thousand to $1.20 per thousand. And so, obviously, we can't sustain that because we don't have the revenues, but the revenue is the only downside of this budget. As far as expenditures, we're looking to do a few more things, and we're looking to keep on keeping on, if you will. And we're long-term looking at being able to stabilize everything. So that's essentially where we are.
Any questions from members on the initial budget presentation?
One quick one.
Yes.
Madam Chair. You mentioned the jail surplus, other reserve, the support prisoners is 0.
The jail, hold on just a second. Now, the jail revenue,
The reserve.
I'm looking at 100,000 instead of 550,000. For revenue.
That's what you project, but is the reserve account empty right now? Is the support prisoner account empty?
It was dollars left over from a jail account in previous years. And that has been mostly expended. We haven't got the final numbers yet because they haven't finished the jail audit this year, which ended in July. But it's very rare and has been very rare. This past year was the only year that we could use fund balance from the jail, or reserve from the jail. And we did, and that was it.
No, I guess what I'm leading to is that we last year took some money out of that account to buy the body scanner, but now I see it's on the expenditure list for COVID relief.
Yes,
So
that's
we
right.
didn't use the reserve money that we intended to use it for, but it's gone. And I just wanted to why. Because that was 150,000, we're up to 150,000 that we approved for a body scanner.
It was, I was unable to approve for the body scanner.
Out of the jail reserve account.
Yes.
But if there's no money in there right now, then we're asking to use that COVID
Well,
money to buy a body scanner.
That's correct, and I'm projecting $100,000 in reserves this year. Otherwise, we're going to be, using $550,000, even though it went down to $400. As you can imagine, our revenues for the jail did not come in last year, as we had anticipated it would. And so we were down significantly in our revenues for the jail last
So we
year.
had to use the jail reserve money for operation.
Pretty much, in many cases, yes.
So we didn't buy the body scanner, we did. Did we get the body scanner?
Yes, yes.
But we used the money out of the reserve account for that? Or how did we?
No, that came out of the ARP money.
So the list we have here on reserve, money for the COVID account, it's already expended, just want us to look at what's already expended.
The 159 is spent.
Well, not on that, yeah, no.
Only that particular.
Oh, that's the only one. Okay. I'll move into the, thank you.
Mr. Pelletier?
Yes, Larry, what was the major cause of the revenues going down? Was it?
There was a significant decrease in our population, and we could not send anybody out to do their, we usually send a number of people out to do painting of schools and those kind of things. That brings in revenue. That revenue was almost nothing.
They had sales, okay.
Yeah, it was all the COVID-related things that we just, nothing was happening as far as.
Yes.
Fund balance, Mr. Post, looking at the revenues, fair to say that the allocations you're asking for 150 this year for consideration is more in line with traditionally what has come from the bond budget for that line item? We used 380 last year.
Yes.
And that was a one-time deal because the intention that you heard in the commissioner's honor associated with that was to hold the tax base at zero. You guys did that primarily with emphasis on the surplus. The 150 that's in this year's budget, that's more traditionally where that number landed.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, I traditionally have used 100 to 150, and even then, I have done it reluctantly,
Right.
only to keep you people happy and the commissioners happy, because it keeps the tax rate down, but, and we were very fortunate in that our last audit, our fund balance has gone over $1 million, but then when you take the 380 out, that reduces that significantly. And so if we had used 150 last year instead of the 380, we would have been building that fund balance as I've been trying to do. But hopefully we're back at it and can do what we
Can I ask a clarification question on that, I guess? Because that was the next piece that I was going to point out, is the fund balance, even with the reduction in the revenues, we were able to grow that by $165,000 this year, which is good news.
Yes.
Are you saying the 380 is yet to close because of this year's fiscal being so open, so you're anticipating that dropping below $1 million again?
Well, it's already below $1 million in that we took 380,000 over the $1 million that we have. And so I've got 350,000 to make up, plus the 150 that I'm using this year. So I'm $500,000 in the hole.
I got you. So when 2021, the calendar year basis closes, you're expecting that to drop back
Yes.
significantly below $1 million.
Yes.
I got you. That's what I need to hear. Thank you.
Great. And we will also be receiving a presentation on the ARP funding, is that correct?
Right, I mean,
Are you also going to present the second page about the ARP funding?
yeah, the ARP funding, the only, let me just, one of the things that you're going to be concerned about is how much of this money that we're spending is going to end up being spent year after year and become part of the budget in future years. Right now, the only thing that is the geomedical contract, and quite frankly, we had that in the budget this year because we have put that off for so long that we no longer can, we have to have 24-hour medical care. Otherwise, we're ending up sending people to the hospital 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're taking away a security guard who needs to be in the jail, and you're creating all sorts of hazards, plus creating more medical expense that we have to pay that could be taken care of in-house. And so there's the $291,000, but we had that again, we had that in the budget, and at the last minute I said, wait a minute, that needs to be pulled out because that's clearly a case where we can spend that from the ARP money.
I'm sorry, Larry, you said 180,000?
That's 291,366 is the.
And then could you explain to us the employee premium pay, what that includes?
Okay, that included the employee premium pay. We paid each employee, and now there are certain things that we couldn't do. We couldn't pay those that worked consistently at home during that time, and so on. But we paid $5,000 premium pay for full-time employees, and then we prorated it down to those that worked over 400 hours.
And so the two elected positions that worked throughout the pandemic were not paid out this premium pay yet.
No, I'm sorry, your mask is creating.
The two employees who are elected
Yes,
officials
yes,
were
those
not
two,
paid.
those two have not been paid. We heard concerns from members of the budget committee. The budget committee has authority over elected officials. We then looked at, okay, now is this salary and wages? We come down to the fact that we're going to allow you to make that change. The two elected officials that are eligible would be the sheriff and the register of probate. Sheriff would be the full-time, and the register of probate is exactly half.
Do folks feel prepared to vote on those two positions and that premium pay tonight? Or should we do that at the next meeting?
Madam Chair, I entertain a motion to actually pay according to the schedule for the two positions accordingly.
Okay, motion by Mr. Ward, is there a second? I would give it a second. Discussion on that item?
Madam Chair, question regarding premium pay, could I do that now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Larry, did you do a comparison with what other communities are doing, or how did you come up with that value?
There was at least one other place that had that amount. Some places did it by hourly. And I know the state of Maine, and they went back, they didn't do it based on this money, but back when it started last year, they gave a $5 an hour increase to a lot of their people. And so
Can you tell me how many employees this covers?
that covered 134.
I know there's a survey that's going around right now regarding what other communities are paying. I know South Portland, I believe, for probably over 250 employees are paying about $500,000 out of their ARPA money. So I just, in comparison, I was just curious as to how that compared. What other
Yeah,
communities-
and they're all over the place, quite frankly, and we looked at it, the fact is that that was one of the 4 categories that we could spend money on, and I looked at, okay, we have this amount of dollars, and if we're going to spend this amount of dollars, I certainly would rather spend it on my people than send someone back to Washington and let them spend it how they think they ought to.
And did was this any consideration based on employees that had more direct contact with the public compared to someone who maybe did not have direct contact with the public or exposed potential?
Most of our, there was one department that was not in contact with the public, and so unfortunately they were not eligible under the guidelines. But everybody else was dealt with the public throughout most of the time.
Thanks much.
Yes.
Madam Chair?
We're gonna go to Mr. Titus.
Just want to make a point, I'm a little concerned about this because just because we can do something like this. I mean, I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but I also know that there's a whole citywide people, both cities and the entire county employees that probably deserve it too. And that we do it just because we can. So I really would be, I guess I can't stop what you've already done. So I'm probably going to be against the elected official, only because that's the only power that I have. Because I really don't think that just because we have the money, that we couldn't find other places to put it, we could really help.
one to close, the first ones to open. We were down very, a month maybe? And that was it, and we were, the first one's back open and dealing with the public, and when everybody else was still shut down months later.
Yeah. I just personally think that it was something that may have been done in haste, because we had the money to do it with anyway, especially when you look at other communities that may be looking at it, but they had from that extreme, 5,000 per employee just seems a lot.
And again, everybody else was, they were all over the place.
Well, I look at that and I look at what the budget shortfall that we're looking at, 12% increase in the levy. 600,000 in revenues that are lost, plus we got now almost 300,000 we want to spend annually for increased medical, and also add that to the list of expenditures. Next year will be close to $1 million short, based on what's going on.
I think we can, I think that jail medical contract, I think we can push that and do next year's as well. Not 100% sure of that, but I'm 98.72%.
Yeah, but eventually it's gonna be in our lap.
Sure, yeah, and it would be this year and next year, if we didn't have this money to offset.
Right, absolutely.
Yes.
I just think that it's not fair to spend money we really don't have, even though the federal government's giving it to us. We're taking advantage of the situation rather than doing something that I think was constructive.
Mr. Ward.
For the points, or some of the points that my other colleagues have actually brought, I know you raised this issue when it was first brought onto the agenda for the commissioners. We raised similar concerns about employee pay actually not going through the budget process. My issue on this is we have two employees that because they're elected, are outside of that. And I'm just looking at equity. Done is done, to Mr. Titus's point, but trying to make it whole for the other two employees.
Further discussion on this point? I'll just add, I'm on board with where Mr. Ward is coming from. I think, we're supposed to think about this in the abstract, but these two employees have done incredible service for our community, and it just so happens that we have purview for this. So I'm very hopeful that this vote goes through and that we can make them as whole as their colleagues. Anything further?
One question of procedure, do we have enough tonight to actually have a supermajority to affect wages?
So we've got, 12 folks here, is that right, or 11? We have 11. And so you may want to consider looking this and
The question I have, point of order, would be, we need 11 to be able to make it binding on the commissioners. A vote in the affirmative to pass this would go to them to be able to know that they have enough to be able to proceed. That's the question I would ask. Is that the case?
Yeah, your 11, although in the past, your 11 votes was binding after the lawsuit and the decision that came down from the judge, even 11 isn't binding finally on the Board of Commissioners.
persuade.
But still, that gives
what
a
they want to do.
But a majority on the vote tonight would be enough for the
Yes.
A simple
commissioners.
majority.
A simple majority would do it on the elected officials, is that correct? Because that's the only one that's a little different from the other.
Because this is not a budget area, right, that's why I was asking.
Specifically, the elected officials. So it's a supermajority tonight.
No, no, it is not. It's a simple majority of 6.
So that point known, I would keep my motion on the table for consideration tonight, knowing that up or down, all we're looking for is a simple majority.
Great, we will take the vote. All those in favor? And keep those hands way up. You're good? All those opposed? Write these down, so please come up. And all those abstaining. Mr. Walker and Mr. Pelletier, what were your votes?
First question you asked.
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't write you down. So the motion does pass 6 to 3 to 1. No, that's not math. 7. 731, my apologies, friends. Chair Christner would ask that that gets passed along to the county commission so that they can take action on that. Other than that, are there any further questions tonight before we move to agenda item number 8? Go ahead, Mr. Ward.
To the point of this document that we're looking at on the ARP funding, this is the only time we will actually see any of this content in the presentation as opposed to, because everything in the budget excludes the content of this document here, correct?
Everything in the budget, there were a couple of things taken out of the budget. One being the, hold on, let me get to it. One being, again, the jail medical contract. The other being under revenue loss expenditures down below that they haven't voted on yet is IT and flooring and roofing.
Okay.
Actually, the flooring and roofing part, that got pulled out of the budget. IT, we hadn't actually put it in, but it was seriously being considered. And so, you know, those two came from the budget. The others were other things that we have been needing to do, but have been putting off way too long. So, that's where we are. The HVAC system,
To my point, everything that's in here, with the exception of the body scanner that was in last year's budget, is outside of this year's budget presentation, correct?
that's good.
So can we put on for a future meeting acceptance of this as part of the capital improvement plan? Because I'd like to, at least for the listening public associated with that and people that I represent, if there was $20 million actually allocated to the county where the commissioners have allocated this funding. I know they've gone through them, so just that it actually doesn't blow up here at the budget, that at least everybody here was informed on that process. Could you do that, and that will make the motion that actually goes on September 29th, we're talking actually capital projects. That would, I think, ARPA funding might be there. So the way that I would approach that would be, what is the total available associated with this? And what has been earmarked as you were showing here, and what's the net amount? Because again, the absence of that, just like anything else that we look at in our budget, you have a revenue stream associated with that that includes other grant funding or federal funding, and we are now taking this off the budget. And I disagree with the concept without it at least being part of the capital improvement plan.
So that's a motion by Mr. Ward, seconded by Mr. Kroll. Are you asking for an acknowledgement or an acceptance or?
Just the presentation associated with that, that we can
Okay.
accept it at the same time that we were accepting the capital improvement plan.
Okay, so we're gonna go with acceptance. I don't think we need a vote on that, so,
No,
future agenda.
I don't disagree.
We've got at least 2 people who are interested,
And
so
it
we'll
is
get that
on,
on.
it is on the agenda for the 29th, so I think that will.
So, all right, folks. Mr. Titus,
I think Phil had something.
he was seconded.
As long as it's going on for future discussion, I'll hold on.
Okay.
One other question and a comment. On the revenues, I noticed Poland contract. Is a major, not being in the 2022 column, a major.
That's correct. And the reason for that is because you have expenditures in the expenditure column, revenues of the same amount in the revenue column, and it washes, and so we took those off and put them in a, I forget what she put them, but anyway.
Why would,
It was in,
It's
right?
listed
Yeah.
on the grant.
Yeah, because it's not, to show revenue and expenditures of the same amount when it's just a contract that gets washed, didn't seem a real
I thought it was a kind of transparent thing to do, so I would prefer it back the way it was. But if it's piled into a grant, big pile of grant money, and not?
Well, it's not in a big pile, it's a separate, they show them separately. So that one offsets the other.
Well, we have to keep watching that, because it's be confusing, whenever we see that, that kind of scares you a little bit, because it's just done a different way, right? I don't see the advantage of doing it the other way, I would much rather it be, and even though you think it's kind of simple, almost simple. But I guess my comment was that we're looking at $330,000 that we don't have this year in revenue, because we're not taking it up on that, which is just borrowing, as you mentioned, you made a good point. That's borrowing money that we really don't have, we just use it to reduce tax levy.
No, because your expenditure is gonna be the same amount.
Right, so we've been doing that, and every town in city seems to do that to some degree anyway. But we gotta be mindful of that, know that we're overspending, so when we're looking at a budget that's not only a 2% increase, but we're still overspending if we don't have the money. And we obviously don't have the money if we've got a revenue shortfall this year, tons of revenue shortfall. Who knows how long that's gonna be? So I think we gotta really take a look at this, I see the 12% increase in tax levy is kind of scary. And that's only gonna get worse unless we find a way to control expenditures. And hopefully some of this money that we're getting from the government, federal government, can help offset some of that in terms of things we would do normally that we aren't gonna have to pay for out of the budget. I'm hoping that that was, done carefully as well going forward, so we don't have to look at it. Just want to make that point that when you take it from fund balance and all of a sudden you take it away, we have to make up for it, and I don't think the tax levy is the place to make up for it.
Okay, any other thoughts before we head on? Resetting our schedule.
Can I ask just one last question? HVAC, the jail, and courthouse, that 6.5, is that the same as the 2.2 or whatever we heard last year? Or what has changed, I guess?
I'm not following you, Alan.
We had a 5-year plan that would have been submitted last year, and there was an HVAC and boilers project of around $2 million, I remember.
Wait,
Is this the same project?
That's the same project, except that it's added AC for this whole building. It's added, and plus the cost have gone out of sight. But the 6,469,000, that's that plus that's expanded.
Okay. And if successful, it will actually replace having to go up to bonding.
Yes, absolutely.
That's
That's,
the minor win here, for sure.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Pettis?
And what we think, because we had a chance to look at this one, when it says commissioners dash remote meetings, $150,000. I know one of the other boards I was on looked at what it was gonna cost to facilitate remote meetings, and that was looking at $20,000 to $30,000 maximum for the equipment needed to do a good remote meeting. Where do we get $150,000 for?
that is a number that was given orally, and we haven't followed up on that to get an actual, but that was a number that was orally given to our people, to do those things that I don't have a clue how they work.
Well, one of the things that we talked about, if we get into the board that I was on, is that the emergency order allows us to do remote meetings. Once the emergency order is over, you couldn't legally do remote meetings, whether you wanted to or not. So we.
Well, yeah, you actually can, but you have to have an ordinance, you have to have
The
a
legislature just
policy
passed-
to do it.
Oh, they did,
So the legislature has now passed something, municipalities and counties can opt into it and can also reframe it. I'm not sure what the county commission is doing, but.
Quite frankly, I prefer to go back to just,
Well, that's what I mean, that's a bad thing, I'm sorry they did that, but. It wasn't $150,000 just to get the equipment to do that.
I looked at that and I said, wait a minute, you guys gotta be crazy, and I had two of my employees, sitting here in front of me saying that's what they told us, and it'll do, it'll probably make coffee right.
Well, I hope so,
That
you
would
know.
be too, but I don't know.
And that HPE system, is that just a number that's in the air, or is that actually a code?
That was a verbal, without pinning it down. Obviously, we're gonna pin it down. And even then, we don't know whether we'll go that route or go a reduced route.
we will move on to agenda item number 8, which is to review and adopt the budget schedule. As we just mentioned, we will add ARP budgeting presentation and acceptance to Wednesday, September 29th. Any other amendments to this schedule?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we suppose were there any changes that were actually, this is what we used last year, right? And I would make the motion that we actually accept it as presented.
Motion for Mr. Ward, do we have a second?
Second.
Sorry, who was it? Mr. Pelletier, thank you. Any further discussions or questions? We'll try to make them all quick but thorough. All those in favor? David Fanning?
Sorry.
All right, we're good, that's unanimous, thanks guys. And last motion,
So moved.
to adjourn. Second from Mr. Pearl, all those in favor? It is unanimous.
Thank you all, looking forward to working with you.